I died under white light. Not moonlight, not firelight. Bright, piercing white of hospital light. A hard, humming glare that never blinked and never cared. The machine at my bedside counted what my body could no longer do. The screen drew green lines. The pump clicked. The plastic ran into my arm. My breath came through dry air and chemical taste. The doctors had a long name for the thing that had killed me. A modern sickness, a treachery of flesh my forefathers would not have known how to curse. My own cells had turned against me in silence, multiplying like a bad law in a weak age. They had cut me, burned me, poisoned me to save me. Still it grew. That was how I ended in the world of wires and sealed windows. Not with a sword, not in a storm at sea, not beneath an oak with blood on my hands. I died in a narrow bed with tape on my skin. It was smell who went first, followed by ears running after. Not all at once. First the machines went quiet. Then the rest of the room. Then Wyrd, who was ever so loud, finally shut his mouth. Cold suddenly grasped me from behind. A cold so clean it stripped me down to the bone thought. I stood in darkness with no ceiling above me and no earth I could name beneath my feet. Wind tore across the black like a beast with 1,000 mouths. Snow came sideways. Blizzard howled as if it hated every living and dead thing alike. He bit through me, though I had no flesh left for it to bite. I was alone. No nurse, no wife, no child, no priest, no hand, only storm and me. I tried to call out, and heard my own voice snatched away and broken apart. Nothing. It was like all came into me at once, and I became all at once. Pain sliced me up as quickly as pleasure mended. I was mad, and mad was me. I was lost. I started to walk because there was nothing else to do. And when I was still, cold and madness would climb into me deeper. If I stopped, I felt myself thinning, loosening, drifting like ash over snow. Then I saw it, far off, small, steady, aglow. Not the false blue of screens or white lights, not the sterile glare of the ward. Fire. Hearth fire. It shone through the storm like a promise too old to flatter and too strong to beg. The light did not come closer. It did not rush to save me. It simply burned, as if to say, "Walk, if you are worthy of warmth." So I walked. The road bent through drifts and stone and wind-carved dark. Once I stumbled, and my hand struck frozen ground. Beneath the ice soil, I heard water, a river, buried but moving, hidden but not stopped. It ran under the black earth with a force that did not ask my leave. I pressed what would once have been my ear to the frost and listened. Deep below, the current kept its law. Then I knew what path I was on. Not a road made for one dead man, a way worn by all who had gone before. The storm above, the river below, the fire ahead, that is enough for any truth. At last the hall rose out of the blizzard. It stood broad and dark and ancient, but not ruined. Oak beams, high gables, roof heavy with snow. Smoke climbed from the vent in a thick, patient column, torn sideways by the gale and yet never broken. The windows glowed amber. The door was iron-banded and scarred by time. No palace, no fantasy. A house just built to outlast men. I climbed the steps. My hand reached out for the latch, but the door opened before I could touch it. Warmth hit me like a pillow. Wood smoke, stew, wet wool, old iron, bread crust, rendered fat, pine resin. The smell of a house that had fed generations all hit me. The hall was long and firelit. Benches ran along the walls. Shadows climbed the rafters. The hearth was there, sat at the center, deep and alive, its coals red beneath the flame like a heart beneath the ribs. And all around it they sat, my dead, not vague spirits, not glowing saints, not soft-faced comforts, my dead. Hard hands, scarred brows, crooked noses I had seen in mirrors, eyes like mine, eyes nothing like mine, men with frost in their beards, women wide-hipped and held fast as winter's branches, a grandmother with a face lined by grief and laughter both, a grandfather whose stare could have split bark, fathers, mothers, farmers, fighters, quiet ones, bitter ones, failures, builders, carriers. Some I would have honored in life, some I would have argued with, some I would have even feared. All of them looked at me as if no lie had ever survived this room. There was no music. There was no welcome cheer. Only the crack of the fire and the low, ceaseless sound of the river beneath the floor. One chair stood empty near the hearth, not at the head, not in glory, just open. I sat. No one told me to, but it felt like the only thing to do in that moment. Then a woman rose, old, lean, gray hair braided down her back. Her hands were burn-scarred. I knew her and did not know her. One of the mothers far behind my own. The kind who kept children alive when winter took their husband and they needed to survive. She looked at me and began. Not ornament, not comfort, just truth. "You came from a dying age," she said. "You were fed poison in bright wrappers and called it food. You were offered softness every hour and called it progress. Your sickness was born in a world that makes men sick in ways cattle would refuse." The hall did not murmur. They had no need. She went on. You did not choose all of it, but do not hide behind that. You knew enough to resist more than you did. You gave too many days to hurry, too many nights to glow and glass, too many strength to people and powers that would not remember your name one season after you were gone. Her eyes narrowed. You nearly let the river end in you. That stung more than when storm unmade me upon arrival. But it was because it was the truth. I remember the years I've spoken of later. Later for children, later for roots, later for duty, later for land, later for the serious things in life, as if later were a storage chest and not a graveyard full of undead work. The woman's voice was flat as split stone. Fear says wait. Comfort says wait. Career says wait. And waiting is how lines die. Then she lifted one finger toward me. But you did not wait forever. The words did not soften. They hit like hammer blows. You put seed into future. You gave the river banks to run between. Sons, daughters, flesh after flesh, mouth after mouth, not as decoration, not as lifestyle, as duty, as continuity, as answer. With that she turned and sat. No praise, no smile, only judgment given. Another stood. A man with one eye clouded and a broken knuckle thick as a walnut. A forefather that came from a time we could not understand. He held a drinking horn, but did not drink. He looked at me like an appraiser looks at an axe. I speak for the name, he said. The hall grew stiller. A man's body rots fast. His name rots slower, but it rots too, if left in limp hands. Then he began to tell my life. Not the way friends tell it. Not the way widows soften it. Not the way the living edit the dead so they can bear them. The exact way it happened. He spoke of the time I kept my word when it cost me money and sleep. He spoke of the winter I carried my father when his legs failed him and did not let him see my resentment. He spoke of the day I bit back fear and spoke plain when everyone else wanted silence because silence was easier. Then he spoke of the filth. The lie I told to spare my pride or to abandon my responsibilities. The apology I delayed because I wanted to be right and to be better than others. The season I let work or fun have my evenings, and gave my family only the shallowness of presence, and not the full weight of me. The moment I chose comfort over courage, and called it prudence. Each thing laid out. No polishing, no excuse. The man looked around the hall, then back to me. This is the marrow of it, he said. Your good does not erase your rot. Your rot does not erase your good. Both are carried. Both are remembered. A name is not a hymn. It is an account. Then he struck the table once with the base of the horn. And hear this well. Stories are not made to flatter the dead. They are made to instruct the living. If your grandchildren speak your name, let it teach them. Let it warn them. Let it arm them. If all your tale does is decorate a shelf, then you die twice and fail us all as a pathetic nothing. He sat. The river under the floor went on speaking in its own tongue. A third was then there ready to speak. It was like he rose to bear witness, but was always there to begin with. This one I innately feared before he even opened his mouth. He was old in the way mountains are old, not frail, fixed, yet ever growing. A man with white hair to his shoulders, and shoulders still broad beneath it. His face might once have been handsome, if stone can even be called handsome. And he carried no weapon, as he needed none. When he spoke, even the fire seemed to listen. I speak for the spirit, he said. Wind slammed the hall outside, as if trying to come in. He did not. The old stone man stared at me so long, I felt every shallow belief I had ever held curled up die. You thought too often in straight lines, he said at last. Born, work, decay, end. That is how weak ages think. They see only what fits on a screen and disappears when the battery fails. A few in the hall gave low, humorless grunts. The old man pointed downward. Listen. So I listened, compelled by his words as much as by my own interest. I could hear the river again, always moving, always sounding. Never once the same water, never once a different river. That is blood, he said. It changes. It remains. It carries the dead in the living, and the living toward the unborn. He then pointed to the rafters, blackened by generations of smoke. That is name, deed laid upon deed, soot of memory, layer after layer, some of it ugly, some of it honorable, all of it real. He then touched his own chest. And this is spirit. Not a vapor for cowards, not a mood, not a slogan or a banner to be woven around. The inward fire that answers for what was done with the breath given to it. He took one step toward me. Chaos did not kill the pattern, he said. Chaos is in the pattern. Flood, famine, betrayal, illness, war, burying sons, bearing daughters, roof beams splitting, fields failing, kingdoms changing gods and then changing them again. The weak think order means the storm never comes. Puh! Fools! Order is what endures because someone keeps faith through the storm. His words struck clean. No poetry for its own sake. Only bones that held the marrow. You live in an age of confusion. You were told roots were chains. You were told inheritance was shame unless it could be sold. You were told the old were obstacles and obsolete. The unborn were burdens. You were told of pleasure as freedom and duty as oppression. He leaned in closer. And every lie in that age was aimed at the same target. I knew the answer before he said it. The river. He then straightened. You do not live forever because you wished it. You live forever only in the 3 ways allotted to men. In blood you carried life forward. In name, if your deeds were weighty enough to be remembered. In spirit, if you can bear to stand before those who made you and hear the truth. He looked around the hall. You are here now because all 3 still speak of your shape, not perfectly, not cleanly, but truly. Some of the hardest words of all were then said. Do not mistake arrival here for triumph. The hall stayed silent. He did not smile. Some come here thin as smoke. No children, no deeds worth retelling, no inward fire, only appetites. They vanish fast. There is little for the river to hold, little for the name to carry, little for the ancestors, for us to receive. These nothings have not earned a seat, and must be taken by storm, to be reused by Wyrd. His gaze hardened. A barren line is a weak bridge. A forgotten name is a snapped beam. A coward spirit is a cold hearth. At last he gave the judgment. You are not a such man. The words landed heavy. Not gentle, not warm. Heavy. You failed, often. You wasted years you should have used better. You served things and men beneath you. You feared pain too much and lost too early. But when the road narrowed, you chose to hand forward what was given to you instead of swallowing it in yourself. He lifted his chin toward the sound below us. The river remembers those who feed it. No one cheered. No one applauded. Instead, one by one, the others began to speak. A woman spoke of the day I held my first child, and finally understood that time is not a ladder, but a handing on. A man spoke of my anger, and how often I let it choose the words before wisdom did. Another told of a field I had never owned, but I had helped restore, and said land remembers labor better than speech. One grandmother told of a kindness so small I had forgotten it, and how small kindnesses are often what keeps lines from turning cruel. Another ancestor spoke of my cowardness in youth, and said plainly, You were soft. Then life beat some of it out of ya. Better late than never. A stern old mother said, You loved your children. Good. You should have loved them with more structure and less mood. But it's too late now. An old fighter said, You wanted to be admired. Bad motive. The dead care about the deed more than the vanity that dragged it there. Some of them laughed at parts of me, not kindly, not cruelly, just honestly. And with every story, good or bitter, I felt something settle into place. I had feared judgment as a blade. It was not. It was a weighing, a setting of stones back into the wall where they had belonged. Crooked stones named crooked, strong stones named strong, broken ones not hidden, missing ones not pretended into existence. That is worse than mercy when you are vain, and better than mercy when you want truth. At last the old man who had spoken for spirit rose again. He took a log and set it onto the hearth. Flame climbed it at once, hungry, bright. He said, "The living think death ends the work. No, she fixes the work. That is all. The river keeps moving without your hands now. What you handed forward will speak for you. What you built will shelter or fail without you. What you taught will either harden into law in your line or rot into excuses. Your part is done, but your consequence is not." He pointed to the empty chair where I had now sat. "Sit. Hear the stories. Learn what you were. When your descendants come in their turn, you will speak too, plainly. No softness, no lies." He looked into me. "That is eternity for our kind, not endless drifting, not a floating comfort. Continuity, return, reckoning, place." Outside the blizzard still screamed. Beneath the hall river still ran. Before me hearth still burned. And I understood at last that I had not fallen out of Wyrd. I had gone deeper into it. My blood moved on where I could no longer walk. My name would only travel as far as my deeds had given it legs. My spirit had come home, not to be flattered, but to be measured and set among those who bore it before me. That is the law. Storm comes, river runs, blood endures. And if you would live beyond your body, while you still have hands,